What's going on, everybody? It's your man Cleveland Terry, and today we are finally going to be discussing the Rane 70 Mixer. This is going to be the best and yet most frustrating review I've ever had to do, but that doesn't mean I didn't like it. Let's talk about it now. All right, guys, so we're gonna go through this mixer from front to back as we always do. I am going to talk about the good things and the bad things at the exact same time. Now, you might hear me talk a lot about bad things and think, oh my God, he hates this mixer. That couldn't be farther from the truth. It's my job to break down all the pros and cons of any device I am reviewing. So I'm going to be honest and I'm going to be fair about the mixer. Keep in mind, and before you say, oh, the reason why he's dogging on the machine is because he is a Pioneer loyalist, I bought this machine with my own money. So this is my property. So the things I'm going to talk about are just things that I have noticed, but they are not deal breakers. Not at all. But I think you have a right to know what you're buying and what the expectations are going to be. Now, let's talk about the back panel as we always do. And let's start over here with the combo jack mics. Now, this one gives you two microphones. If you've used the Rane 62 or even the S9, you'll know that they only have one microphone. This one gives you two combo XLR combo drives with a switchable line in for both of them. Moving over, we have our phono grounds and our RCA inputs. This is one of the first things that we're going to talk about because it's one of the first things that they changed moving from the Rane 72 to the 70. If you remember, one of the issues with the Rane 72 was that it gave you the phono input and it gave you an auxiliary input, but the auxiliary couldn't be used for DVS. It was only for auxiliary CD line in type of things. Now on this one, not only do they have a switchable CD/phono, but they also have a switchable auxiliary that is changed in the control panel, which allows you to use your auxiliary as your DVS. So that's exactly how I have it going right now. I have my phase going into my auxiliary panel, and then I have my turntables going into the CD phono, so I can use vinyl and or I can use my phase. Great job. Love that about this mixer. Moving over, we have our standard session in, session out, and then we have our left and right 1/4 inch booth output. Right above that, we have our 12 USB inputs. I want to pause right there and talk about this because this is a great feature to have, the USB inputs. The problem with it is they are only designed to be used with the 12 or super low power controller. So you can use this with like the XP2. It works with that. The power requirements of the XP2 are really, really low. However, if you try to plug in your phases, you get this. You get my point. So they can't be used with phase. There's not enough consistent power coming out of these USBs in order to power the phases. They missed a huge opportunity with that, especially considering that the phase are going USB only in a minute. Wouldn't it have been cool that this could be a nice little USB hub that would patch through and then you could plug your phase right in there and still retain your extra ports instead of using up all your ports for your phase? Moving over to the next section, you have your standard XLR outputs and your USB ports. Now, your USB ports also do audio out. In order to get the Rane 70 to work, let's say for instance, if you're streaming to like OBS, you have to go into the panel and do some real creative things to make it see the non-tone version of the channel. You see, Rane puts their audio, I believe it's 7 or 8, so on one of the upper channels that a lot of programs can't see. So in order to get around it, you have to put it into the surround sound setting of OBS in order to get your mixer to work. But we did find it. It's fixed for now, but the problem is it works in OBS because I can get in there and access those upper channels. But if I use another software like an Ecamm or I try to plug it into Zoom or something like that, it's not going to be an option for me. Let's move on to the front panel. The front panel, pretty straightforward. You have your secondary mic and the power switch for the mic, and then you have your echo effects, which are only for mic 1. They will not work on mic 2. On the mic 2, you have your level, and then you have a tone. Yes, on all of the microphones on the 70, you only have a tone. You don't have a 2-band EQ like most do, like the 62 had, gone, and there's no way to adjust that even in your settings. You can adjust your main crossfader with the tension knob, and the tension knob is excellent. It's a very good tension knob. It can get into the real micro adjustments to really get that perfect feel for you. Very happy with this Mag 4 fader. As we all know, the 72 fader was a little heavy for a lot of people. This fader feels a lot more like the 62 with just some enhancements. Drop down below, you got your reverse off and ons for all 3 of your faders, and then move to the right, we have split Q. Thank you for continuing to keep the split Q, especially as a hardware, not a software switch. Appreciate that. And then you have your standard 1/4 inch and then mini jack headphone outputs. Okay, let's move on to the top of the panel. Now, I want to say something about this before we get into the details. The 70 mixer and 72 mixer are fairly large mixers. If you were to compare this to the S9, you would see that it has some extension on it. In fact, it's so big that I couldn't use my standard case. I had to actually go and buy a new case for this mixer because it would not fit. By the way, that mixer case review is coming probably tomorrow, but it is a longer mixer, and that does play into ergonomics and how you touch and feel. Sometimes it feels like I'm stretching a little more with this mixer compared to like the S9. It was a little more compact. Everything was closer to you. Not that big of a deal, but it is something to think about, especially if you're using some sort of a slider case, and some of the top buttons, which we're going to discuss, are located kind of underneath and maybe to the back. So let's move over to the top here, and we have our Serato controls right here. You have basically a knob, the back, the load, which goes into your prepare folder, and then your load switch right here. And you have one for deck 1 and deck 2. Moving right underneath it, you do have your main mic, mic 1, and mic 1 comes with your standard volume and then your tone knob. We already discussed that. And then you have your on for your microphone and then your echo option. The on button actually has a talkover mode, even though it's not listed here. If you just hold down the on button long enough to where it starts flashing, now you're in talkover mode, kind of like the Denon that I talked about before. I want to talk about the talkover mode because this implementation, and the same thing with the Denons, are some of the best talkover modes I've seen. It's actually very, very usable, and I really appreciate that. When you start talking, it drops right down the music. The moment you stop, the music comes back up, but it's not harsh. I actually use a lot, especially when I'm live streaming. That talkover mode is a godsend. So moving over, we have our standard EQs. We have our switchable knob right here. A is for your DVS. When I say A is your DVS, is because obviously there is a dedicated auxiliary input, but when you switch it to DVS in the settings, this USB actually becomes your DVS again. So you just have to keep that in mind. It's no longer on the aux channel. The aux channel is your Serato tone, as you can see. Moving on, we have our low pass, high pass filter, but the sound wise, full kill, all the way out. Great job. Moving over to the mix settings, you have your master volume and your booth volume. And then over to the right, you have your session in and out with a Q button to hear your volumes on that. Let's talk about the middle setting here. Now, this is your display and your utility folder basically for the entire mixer here. And it gives you everything you need for the most part in the mixer. So right in the middle here, we have all of the effects available to us. Now, this does internal effects, which can be used with your traditional vinyl. And then it does Serato effects, which are what they call software effects. It has your standard echo, reverb, break, flanger, phase, delay. They all sound really good. Echo. They're all post fader. You have your standard depth knob, which will adjust the amount of it. And all of them have different settings based upon what type of effect they're using. Dropped over to your software effects, which are your Serato effects. And now these 6 buttons become these 6 buttons in Serato. Now, the only difference between the software effects versus the hardware effects are you can use them concurrently, but it's all or nothing. You affect everything by adjusting the knob. You can't just say, I want to adjust the low pass filter anymore. It's all or nothing. As far as the paddles go, they are excellent feeling paddles. I actually love them a lot. They feel really good. There's a nice spring to them. They feel very durable. The LED on the top is a nice touch. When they're on, they flash. That's also a nice touch, just like the 72. Oh, I didn't mention, on your hardware effects, in order to move to the left and right, you have to slide this over. If you have ever used like the 62, you know how that feels. And then you can adjust the actual beats or whatever the effects are. And if you need to adjust the tempo, you have to move down to the tap right here and adjust it from there. And they will only adjust the thing that is selected at the time. So right now I have it selected to the right. If I start messing with it, as you can see, it adjusted to the right, it left the left alone. In order to do that, I have to switch it. So you do have some independence with the left and the right. So let's go into the software control panel here. Now, to get into the software control panel, you have to move over to the shift and the tab. You have to hold them both down at the same time, and then it takes you into your software control settings. In the settings, you have your audio, which is where your pan is located. Remember, I talked about the 62 being the last mixer to have a pan. Well, you can adjust the pan, but it's a software-based pan. You can adjust your filter settings, meaning is it going to be a full cut? Is it going to be a half cut? You can adjust all of these things right here and make it to your liking. The pads, interestingly enough, the pads, which are, by the way, great feeling pads, you can adjust certain things. Like you can adjust the sensitivity of the pads, but you can also adjust the daytime mode. Now, the daytime mode means that they're gonna get brighter when you're in the daytime, and it's set to default to be on. You see, if I turn them off, you get a very dull button settings, which obviously if you were in a super dark club environment, then maybe you'd wanna turn those off. But in the daytime, you definitely want them on. Here's the thing, this is the only daytime mode there is. When the machine goes onto sleep mode, this screen reverses to a daylight settings mode, which means a white background with black writing. However, you can adjust that yourself. It's only when it's sleeping. So maybe they can create another little section here on a firmware update that allows us to set the white on black to be a daytime mode for everything else. You can adjust the headphone mode, take out some of the bass, maybe add a little highs if you want. And the microphone, you can adjust the echo feedback, because it does have an echo feedback, which is great. I want to drop down to this thing called Clean Feed. This is a really, really cool feature, especially for you DJs out there that are producing mixes on your own. Say, for instance, you are live streaming. That's the in thing right now, so that's what I'm going to reference. Or you're at a nightclub and you're DJing, there's an MC on the microphone and they're chatting it up, and you want to record your mix without their loud ass talking. Well, by turning Clean Feed on, the mic no longer passes through your recording. So you get a perfectly clean recording of just you mixing without them talking. You want to know something that's even cooler? If the talk over mode's on and you're talking in the microphone and the music drops down as it's supposed to in talk over mode, well, it doesn't translate into your mix. Your mix still stays perfect. This is amazing. I love this feature. It might be in other things too, but I don't care. It's in mine right now, and I love that fact. As we scroll down this pad right here, we'll see that along with these amazing pads, we have these secondary pads, which are for your instant doubles. Now, the instant doubles are exactly what they sound like. If you have a song playing on this side, you hit the instant double, it automatically loads this side with the instant double. That's great. I find that very useful. I use it all the time. But I also use the silent cue button all the time. And this is where it gets a little complicated. So once we move into the instant double setting, this is where we can change all of the things. The instant double is the normal mode. Then we move over to sync mode, and then we have our silent cue mode. The problem is I need a quick and easy way to switch between all three of those settings without having to go into the menu. I have a solution, and it should be really easy for them to do. Create an option, firmware update, that says if I hold the shift button and I press my instant double button, say the left button, it switches to the next setting and color coded. So maybe you have a red, green, and blue LED. When I hit 1, the red is for silent Q. You know, the blue is for sync, and the green is for instant double. That way, visually, I know where I am, so there's no confusion, and I can quickly get to these things without having to go back into my settings, go back into the silent Q, change the knob, move it all over. Now, the only slightly redeeming quality of it is it remembers your settings. So even if I'm here in Echo, if I go back to the silent Q, the instant doubles is the first thing that comes up. So it remembers the page you were on, but they should make it to where it's external and I can just quickly just flip to it really, really easily. Let's move down to the pads. Now, pads, A+ pads, they feel good, they react well. A lot of the main things that you use are right here. You have your hot cue, we have our saved loop, we have our loop rolls, the sampler, and then the transports. This mixer actually comes with its own set of transport controls. So if you're not rocking vinyl or some sort of CDJs or something, you can do everything from within the hardware. That's another A+ thing. Here's the thing. We all know the main settings that are up here, okay? Hot cue, save, blah, blah, blah. But there are additional settings on the secondary pages, but they don't list them anywhere on the deck. I don't know why. That's weird to me. Every other mixer comes with the secondary things. The 72 has its secondary settings right underneath here because the hot cue doubles as the pitch play. So if I'm here, but for some reason, it's not listed here. I don't know why. It's bizarre, honestly. Now, I know that for some of these things, maybe they're designed to be used as user controlled pads. Fine, I get that. But we've had user controlled pads on all of the mixers, and we know when something's usable versus when something is doubling as something else. All right, along with your sampler, you do have sampler volume. You don't have low pass, high pass like some of the other mixers do. You have your deck 1 and deck 2 headphone cue points, and then your cue and mix knob, and then your headphone cue level. And then the brass ring of the mixer, and that's the faders. As I said before, faders are great. Love the feel of the faders. The Mac 4 fader is excellent. It feels a lot like the 62 fader, but just improved. And in all honesty, the 62 fader was an amazing fader, so I'm very happy with that fact. It's very quiet. This one is kind of a mute sound. Some people will like it, some people won't. I love it. Great feeling crossfader. What else do I need to talk about here? Oh, and for the people that use vinyl, the vinyl sounds really good. I have no issue with the sound of it whatsoever. All the filters still work the way they should. Full kill. And then the echoes work just like they do. All the effects work. Even the brake works. So everything you need is in this mixer. The one thing it doesn't have, which is I actually miss a little bit about, that's from the S9 where you could do a full loop and the loop would just continue on until you turned it off. It doesn't have that in here. Now it does loop for a while, but by the time you hit the third loop, you can definitely hear the decline in volume. So I wish it had that. I wish there was a way to keep that going with the full depth knob, but not in the cards for now. So you're saying you have a lot of complaints about this mixer. Do you even like this mixer? Yes, I like this mixer a lot. It checks off all of the things that I needed a mixer to do. Now you see, when I'm complaining about things that I wish it would do, those aren't deal breakers for me. And for a lot of people, they're not even gonna matter to you. I mean, my job is to break down all the things that I see are wrong and that are good with this mixer. But for your average person, this mixer is going to be the end all. You're not gonna need much more than this. If you're comparing this to the 72, don't, because they're not the same mixer. This mixer is the 70, and it's designed to be a kind of a classic style mixer, battle mixer, and it does everything you need. So if you're wondering, oh, well, this is missing some things. Yeah, it is. Most people aren't using those, okay? And if you are using that kind of stuff, then you should probably get the 72. But for your average person, your average DJ, your average battle DJ, this gives you everything you need and more. Yes, do I wish it had some EQs on the microphones? Yes. Do I wish that the USBs had more power? Yes. Do I wish that they could make some subtle changes to the display so I could switch over my instant doubles? Of course. Does that change the way I feel about the machine? No. I can still rock with the machine. I still like putting my hands on the machine. The knobs, the layout is actually done very, very well. And it sounds great. It is a great sounding mixer. So I have no complaints about this mixer, besides the fact that I have complaints about this mixer, if that makes any sense. Some people have asked me, how are you getting the Rane 70? I can't seem to get it. They seem to be sold out everywhere. I bought this mixer literally the day it went on pre-order on American Musical. I just got it a couple weeks ago, so that should tell you where you are if you are just now ordering the mixer as opposed to when I ordered it. All right, guys, if you found what I said here useful, hit that like button. If you found what I said here really useful, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow me on the Instagrams and the Twitters. Always a pleasure. If I don't talk to you later, we'll talk soon. Peace.